Hello and welcome back. Finals are finally over, the monkeys and I have moved, and I've got an interesting question for you. What does the new baby Prince George and Skunk Cabage have in common? Today on Brainwave, we're going to talk about the science that links these two seemingly unrelated things. This connection goes back to a trip that I took with my botany professor, Dr. Rivera. We went to a bog at the Ward Reserve outside of Lowell, Massachusetts, in order to look at some of the interesting plants that grow there. After looking at some moss, admiring the center pool, and playing in the soft mucky ground, we stumbled on a patch of skunk cabbage.
That ball right there is the flowers. Alright? So that's an inflorescence.
So how would you
smell it?
identify it?
Yeah. Why is this called skunk cabbage?
Like skunk.
In this case you have two kinds of flowers. You have staminate flowers and pistillate flowers. What you're looking at is the pistillate ones. Okay, the staminate ones are below that. Now there's a reason why they smell like that.
What up
Sulfur.
there?
Flies, right. And what happens is flies come in, they go all the way down to the bottom, and they get their nectar or whatever. And when they come back out, they pollinate the female flowers.
That's cool. Turns out the only reason that skunk cabbage smells so bad is because it lets out sulfur to attract its main pollinator, flies. That's pretty cool.
Now on top of that, you notice that everything around here is pretty much dead, except for the skunk cabbage. Now, because skunk cabbage happen to have mitochondria which are called uncoupled, meaning that instead of making ATP, they release heat.
When we're talking about uncoupled mitochondria, we're saying that the proteins in the electron transport chain are uncoupled from their normal process. In normal mitochondria, you have these proteins called the electron transport chain embedded inside a membrane. And these proteins work to pump hydrogen across the membrane to create a concentrated side and a not concentrated side. This creates what's called an electrochemical gradient. Now these protons want to move from the concentrated state to the not concentrated state. A very special protein called ATP synthase allows the protons to flow back from the concentrated side to the not concentrated side. It acts almost like a water wheel, driving the synthesis of ATP, which is like the cell's metabolic currency. Now, in uncoupled mitochondria, there are proteins called uncoupling proteins that dissipate this proton gradient. They make it so that there's less protons on the concentrated side to want to flow back to the non-concentrated side. And that means that less protons are flowing through ATP synthase, and therefore less ATP is being produced. This may seem counterintuitive because the plant does need ATP, but think about it. All of this energy of the protons built up on one side trying to get back to the other has to go somewhere. If it's not going into making bonds of ATP, it can be released as heat.
So in the winter, they stay warm.
Huh.
Wow.
They don't have to die.
Crazy. That's crazy, yeah.
The very first uncoupling protein to be discovered, UCP1, or thermogenin, is found in brown adipose tissue. This is basically one of the two major kinds of fats. You find brown adipose tissue in hibernating and newborn mammals, hence Prince George. This kind of fat helps the hibernating and newborn mammals stay warm when they otherwise couldn't. I think this is a great example of how biology and chemistry and science really link the world around us. But what do you think? Does skunk cabbage's ability to use uncoupled mitochondria make it a warm-blooded plant? And do these chemical similarities mean that we're not so far from the animals and plants around us? How about some other scientific connections that you're curious about? Please let me know in the comments below. Rate, comment, and subscribe. My name's Peter, and this is Brainwave.